G'day, you beautiful bastards. My name is Mitchell, along with
Dylan.
And you have tuned in for Two's Company 3's podcast weekly YouTube review segment. Now, what do we call that YouTube review segment there,
That
Dylan?
review segment is called Two's Company 3's a podcast, 2C3 pod, you bastards, DTCR does the cinema.
That's right, and along with this segment comes some catchy theme music, so whack that button there, Dylan. Oh, we're jiving. We're jiving. Coming at you fresh, coming from afar, it's 2C3 Pod DTC. That is correct, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for 2C3 Pod DTCR Does the Cinema. Now, we have a podcast, all links are down below, and
Yes.
every Friday we have a segment called Yas or Pass, where we look at the films coming to theatres that weekend. And along with that, we pick one to watch for this here very segment.
That's
now,
right.
Which film did we choose this week?
This week we got the exceptional choice of Bill and Ted 3 Face the Music. Now, this
That's
is a very
correct.
interesting film that's coming out at a very interesting point in time because, fair enough, the original Bill and Ted films have their own charm and they were very
Of course,
timely
of
and they
course.
were very beloved by a big fan base, over the years.
Yes, of course.
I don't think anybody really saw this one coming, though. It kind of popped out of nowhere. I don't think anybody was really clamoring for it.
No, that's
over the
exactly
years.
right. As we've discussed many times on the podcast, it all came about and was announced at the height of Keanu Reeves being the internet's darling.
Yeah, that's right.
And coming from that, by the time this was announced, that had kind of cooled down a little bit.
Yep.
So everyone was like, oh, okay, I guess
Yeah.
we'll take it, kind
And
of
not
thing.
only that too, but Alex Winter, we haven't who plays Bill. We haven't
Yes.
seen Alex Winter really in anything.
Anything at least this noticeable.
That's right. In comparison to someone like Keanu Reeves,
Yes,
so for him
absolutely.
being essentially like the lead role, I think everybody was a bit skeptical on how his performance would turn out.
Yes.
but I'm safe and happy to say that the performances in this film across the board were
Yes.
top notch. I adored this fucking film.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's have a discussion, shall we?
Okay, let's discuss.
Because I feel like this should have been left
Okay.
in the past.
Wow.
Yes. There was 3/4 of this film where it did not appeal to me whatsoever.
So the 3/4 of the film, are you talking about the first few
The
acts, like
first-
the leading up to the final
Yes,
moment?
the first
Okay.
2 acts, if we're going 3 acts in a film, the first 2 acts really did nothing for me.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not sure if it's because I didn't prep myself by watching the first 2 to get,
didn't
get
either.
to get a feel for it. Maybe that would have helped. Maybe I would have been like, oh, this is the humor that
Yeah.
is from the first 2 kind of thing. But I'm not sure. It just kind of really didn't do anything for me.
Okay.
Like the first 2 acts, and that's the thing. I loved everybody involved. Like you said,
Yeah.
they all played their parts to a T. But those parts, I feel like, really should have been left in the 90s.
Yeah,
like,
no, fair enough.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing, a resurgence of like these older films and these people coming back,
Yes.
as older versions of their former characters,
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
and essentially playing to the same beat. So like Bill and Ted, played by Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves,
Of course.
play Bill and Ted the way they were, the same types of personalities.
Yes.
And usually, that's the first thing I thought after leaving this film, is usually most films I sort of think there and go, surely there's been some growth. Surely there's
Yeah.
been some differentiation between like their former selves and them currently now.
Yes.
But I was also under the impression that's like, okay, they haven't changed a bit. They're still
Yes.
completely oblivious to the world around them. They're
Oh,
the only
100%.
people in this universe that know the truth about time travel and,
Yes.
and all of that jazz.
Yeah.
And they played that to a T, and that's, for me, that worked. I was
Yeah,
like, okay,
no.
they're exactly the same characters they were, just 20 years older with no maturity level whatsoever.
Yep.
The film essentially tells the story of Bill and Ted, who've been raveled in this universe-ending event where if they don't come up with the song to unite the universe,
Of course.
the whole thing's going to implode. So because they're failed musicians essentially over the years since the Wild Stallions.
Yes, exactly.
They've been failing all this time to write that song. So all the events you see in the trailer of seeing them as other versions of themselves
Yes.
is them traveling to other points in time in the future to try and retrieve that song, in which they essentially keep meeting shitter versions of themselves. And I really
Yes.
like that aspect. And
No.
the further they went, the worse they got. And they were like, oh man, these people aren't cool at all.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't mind that aspect of traveling forward in time to try and steal the song from themselves. Essentially, I didn't
Yeah.
mind that aspect, but just honestly, the whole vibe of it all,
whole
it was
thing.
it just felt too 90s, and I'm not sure. Like Samara Weaving is Samara
Felt
Weaving.
too 90s.
Oh, stop it! I
Felt
know. I
too
love the
90s.
I love the first 2. That's why I was disappointed in myself for coming out
Yeah.
and going, man, I really was bored until I'm just going to say it now. The introduction of Dennis Caleb McCoy.
Oh, see, that was the worst part of the film for me.
Really? That was-
so in
Wow.
the film, like they've been sent out to retrieve this song and record
Yes,
this song,
yes, of
right?
course.
But at the same time, there's also a killer robot on the hunt for them.
Nothing to do with the robot. It's when he starts to talk.
He starts to discover himself.
Yeah.
And he
He
develops
becomes
a personality,
self-aware.
and he realizes the mistakes he's made, and he's like, "Oh no,
No, exactly.
Oh, no."
When he starts to talk and then
Yeah.
he's like, I have a name, and like, starts to talk, that's when I was like, okay, all right. And it started to kick into gear getting into that third act.
Okay.
And then, of course, the return of William Sadler as Death.
Yes, it's amazing.
The ending to it all and that last act, I loved.
Okay.
I loved it. I just don't know what it was. Maybe I was just in a bad mood that day. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But those first two acts for me just really didn't do anything for me.
Okay,
You know
well,
what I
that's
mean?
unfortunate because for
No.
me, that's what was carrying the film, and the final act itself,
Yeah.
when it all comes together, was quite good. There's only one gripe I have is
Yeah.
when you see actors play musicians and the actors clearly aren't musicians themselves.
Yeah.
Like there's a character in this film, he's essentially Jimi Hendrix and, and Mozart, and they're
Yes.
playing these instruments, and there's a clear shot of him holding the guitar, and he looks like Lil Wayne when he was holding that Hello Kitty guitar, whatever it was back in the
God,
day.
yeah.
And you can just tell he's never held a guitar in his life.
Oh, 100%.
I get the gimmick of the character. That's
Yeah.
all well and good. But as
Yeah.
a musician, I'm like, surely they could have found a different African-American actor who kind of looks like Jimi Hendrix, who does know how to handle a guitar.
Yeah, see, that's something me with no musical talent whatsoever just looks at it and goes, looks legit.
And that's what this film was for.
Yeah.
There's one other thing as well, one other positive as well about this film that I did admire is that it definitely felt its budget.
Okay.
Like the film as a whole, some of the special
Yeah.
effects are pretty good, but you can also tell that some of them are a bit on the lower budget side.
Yeah.
And, they definitely cut corners with green screen. There's a hell of a lot of green screen.
100%.
But I think the type of humor and the tone that this film has, I think it works to its advantage.
Yeah.
So the budget itself overall USD dollars is $25 million.
Okay, what?
For a megastar like Keanu Reeves to come
Yeah.
back with Samara motherfucking Weaving, TCTP hot list.
Oh, absolutely.
Samara Weaving as well.
Yeah.
And the return of Death and all of the characters that they had to introduce and the songs as well.
Yes.
I think this film made the most of what it could with its budget, and I think having the smaller budget was definitely works to its favour.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely see that. But saying 25 million, that makes a lot of sense for what we saw, But being a comedy film, you don't expect the big bombastic
No, that's
action,
right.
perfection like type film. So
Yeah.
no, that completely makes sense. But yeah, no, at the end of the day, I might not have just been in the mood for nostalgia.
Okay,
That
that's fair enough.
easily what it could have come down to. I understand everything you're saying. I understand its appeal. I understand people loving this film for every second of it. But me personally, the final act is fantastic, but leading into it, I was just like, nah, I've seen it
That's
before.
unfortunate.
I've seen it before.
The weird thing is like, we've got this sort of, this comparable opinion of the film
Yeah.
where I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it and you were kind of bored by it. Since this film's inception, it's been released earlier this month.
Yes.
I haven't heard of it.
No.
Nobody's talking about
No.
it, so it's not really making the waves I think they expected it to make, but it is a very niche film.
No, that's exactly
it is
right.
very.
And we've
It's made for people like me who really adored the originals, who want to
it's
see
made
these
it's made
characters
for people
return.
like me as well. I'm just like I said at the top of this review, I'm disappointed in myself and not enjoying it more than I should have. But I think that also has to do with the current climate in the world as well. Cinema isn't that big of a deal at the moment because of all the other shit going on in the world. So, at the end of the day, all right, if we're going to give this a rating out of 10, I'm going to give it probably 4.5, 5.
Okay.
As in, it's enough where if it was on TV, I wouldn't just flick it off immediately. I'm
fair enough.
I'm not leaving going, oh, why was this made?
Yeah.
I'm just going, meh, I'm not in the mood.
Okay, fair enough. For me, I'm giving this a solid 8.
Yeah, cool.
And the reason is for what I've said, it does what it can with the budget, and the characters themselves are all played exactly how they're supposed to.
Yep.
Even Death, obviously in his older age, he still played that
He's
magnificently, that
fantastic.
role.
And my God, he's a hell of a hopscotch player.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's cheating as well.
I know, exactly.
But I'm also kind of vouching, and nobody's talked about this yet at all, but I would hope to God that somewhere in somebody's mind of the producers of the possibility of a spin-off
Really?
with Samara Weaving as Theodora and Bridget Lundy, I can't see the last name on my screen,
Payne.
as little Billy and little Ted, basically.
Billy and Thea.
Yeah, Billy and Thea. I would
yeah.
love a spin-off of those two characters because they played, the daughter version of these characters so bloody well, and I think their dynamic was really interesting.
Billy and Thea's wacky wild something.
Adventure.
Wacky something. Yeah.
I would love to see a spin-off like
Wacky
that.
Windfall. I don't know. There's an idea.
But
Hollywood.
the one thing that really let me down about this film as well is, as I mentioned, I liked the entire thing, but the final credits really ruined it for me.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Because the whole film is this big bombastic 90s/80s action musical comedy.
Yeah.
And, with the 3D font and everything, the Bill and Ted. And then the final credits roll, and it's not a rock song. It's like a kind of a pop rock song, very generic.
Yep.
And the font is like Bill and Ted Face the Music in this big, thick, just black, bold, non-3D kind of look to it. I was like, it goes from this big bombastic 90s fantastical visual film
Yeah.
to this really stock standard
To this.
Microsoft Word looking thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, why wouldn't they play something from the 80s, like an Iron Maiden tune over big, thick,
Yeah.
bold cartoons or something like
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
It was like, here's this tone. The final credits was done by someone completely different.
The final tone was done by somebody who ran out of money from that low budget.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, maybe that was it.
Potentially,
Yeah.
very potential. But yeah. Anyway,
That's been our review, ladies and gentlemen, of Bill and Ted Face the Music. Leave your comments down below what you thought about that film, and let us know what you're looking forward to next. We actually have a film slate coming out towards this year.
Oh, yeah.
But we also have a lot that we're still missing out on. But if you want to hear
course.
more about that, definitely check out our podcasts. Links are all down below.
absolutely. And why not check out the socials as well? Just search 2C3 Pod everywhere. And if you're looking for that podcast, all platforms, 2C3 Pod. Simple as that.
That's
but
right.
We have a cliche slogan, of course.
That's right.
Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course,
YouTube. Big Sum of Blowout. Excellent. I don't know why we do that 1,000 times all the time, every week for a good 12 months or more.
Yeah.
We still can't get that right. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button and subscribe button as well. Share amongst all your friends, and we'll see you in the next video.
Absolutely. I'm Mitchell along with
Dylan.
And don't forget, we are Two's Company.
And you are the podcast.
Thanks for tuning into that video by Two's Company Freezer Podcast. Don't be sad though, there's plenty more where that came from. Another cheeky video right there, maybe even hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. Or, if you don't like our faces, check us out on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube.